Welcome, art students! Today we're going to do a canvas painting. It is a sailboat on a lake, kind of a dramatic sunset sort of a setting, so stay tuned for all of the step-by-step instructions. Hey art students, I'm here to do a canvas painting today using acrylic paints. I have a sailboat painting that I'm using as inspiration, and this is one I did a couple days ago. So this is where we're headed. We're going to start with a blank canvas. When you're selecting your canvases, you want to choose one that is stapled on the back so that the sides are nice and clean. Then you can paint around the side of the painting and it can be hung up without framing. I used a very limited palette of colors, and these were ordered from Blick Art Supplies. This one may not have been from Blick. I may have just picked this up like at Michael's or something, but the colors that I used are Blick Studio acrylics. This is a very affordable. The quality is okay-ish. If you can budget something more expensive, go for it. But if you're really working within a budget, these are not good, affordable acrylic paints. So I used white, black, and this is titanium white, ivory black specifically. I used dioxazine, I don't know, I just read it, I never pronounce it out loud. Dioxazine purple, so I used purple and a basic blue. This one is the Studio Primary Blue, sort of a magenta color. This is alizarin crimson. And then a basic red, which this is called primary red, and I will say this particular red is really, really pink. So if you're going somewhere else to look for paint, you may want to get one that lends toward the pink side, or if yours is really like a red, like fire engine red, it is going to look a little bit different than what I have here. Mine, it really draws on that pinky to purple sort of sky color, but I think you could get some really interesting results if you went with more of a red. And then yellow, just a basic yellow, and again this is primary yellow. I actually kind of prefer a yellow that has just a little more, I mean this one looks almost greenish to me, like a neon or fluorescent yellow, so it's not my favorite, but it worked well for this painting. So the first thing we're going to do is, it's a water scene, it's sunset, so you're going to have your your sky reflected in the water. I'm going to start with the blue, and my palette is dirty from where I did this before, but I think this is going to work okay. So I squirt out maybe about the size of a large pea. And I'm just going to start with putting this pure color down. It's going to be darkest here at the top and at the bottom, and I'm going to paint around the edges. One thing I want you to notice is the brush strokes I'm using. They're short brush strokes, and I kind of crisscross, and what I am trying to do is get the pigment down into all of these little the spaces in the texture of the canvas. If when you're painting, the particular paint you have is kind of a thick bodied paint and it's not smoothing out very well, you can always get just a tiny bit of water and kind of on your palette press it into the paint, and it may go on a little smoother. This particular paint, the thickness is actually pretty good as it is, this particular color at least. Now, if the blue that you squeeze out of the tube of paint you have, if you're not crazy about that color, you can always play with it a little bit and mix in, maybe do a combination of blues from the supply that you have, or mixing in a little bit of the purples that you have. Kind of playing with those colors could be very effective on a sunset canvas. But I like this particular blue pretty well for what I'm doing. So then I have some white on my palette already from where I used it before, and I'm going to mix a little bit of white into this blue on the palette and then start painting it in here. As long as this is wet, then I can just go right into that blue and kind of your goal is to have a subtle transition with the blues. You don't want like dark blue and then a streak of medium blue. I'm going with kind of mixing them, trying to get them to blend together. Sometimes this blue gets too dry if you've waited too long, or if it just took you too long to get the paint on. And if that happens, you can just go back and add more pure blue. But your goal is to get a pleasing transition. And the great thing about sky paintings is that the sky always looks different. Like each sunset, the sky has different qualities to it. So as an artist, we have a lot of flexibility. Your goal is to make a beautiful painting. So right here it is really, really dry and it's not mixing together very well. So if I take this brush, it's got a lot of stuff loaded on it. If I went right up there right now, it would get a lot of light into this area. And instead I'm going to get some more blue and come with the blue down into the white. Or come with the blue down into the lighter area. Okay, the next step, while this is wet, I want to work pretty quickly. I'm going to get some of this alizarin crimson, kind of the magenta color, and squeeze it out. And my goal is to do, again, this transition from pinks into purples, and to make it more, the more this alizarin crimson gets mixed into the blue, the more purpley it's going to be. So the first step, I want to decide where I want my horizon line to be, where the sky will meet the land and the water. The land's going to be here, the water line's going to be here. And the one place you want to avoid is right smack dab in the center of your canvas, and that is, it really is a default. So often that's just where we put it. I even know I'm not supposed to do it, and I still do that. So you want to pick an area that's not perfectly in the center. So I'm going to go down about here, so it's more like maybe dividing it 2/3, 1/3. Dividing the canvas into thirds. And I'm just going to take my brush and eyeball a line that goes sort of across. And if this isn't perfectly even, you're going to get chances throughout your painting, opportunities to sort of adjust that. And it actually doesn't have to be perfectly horizontal. As far as it could be higher or lower, like maybe the land is positioned higher or lower on either side. But where the water line is, you definitely want that horizontal, because water never lays on the earth at an angle. It always distributes, so the surface of the water is perfectly horizontal. So now I'm going to be getting pink into the sky and blend this alizarin crimson into the sky and blending it into the blue. Very similar to the types of brush strokes that I did with the blue. And I will also squeeze out some of my primary red, and I'll be using both of these colors. One thing I want you to notice as I go along, so that you're prepared for it with your painting, there will be moments where it looks awful. It just looks too garish, too jarring with the colors, and so you just have to use what you know about color. Like, oh, the color's too bright, I need to add white to soften the color down, or it's too bright, I need to add white to make it lighter, or I need to get my blue wet again and get those two colors to mix together because it's too the transition is too dramatic. And another thing about canvas that you have experienced is there's a drying point with acrylic paint that if it's sort of dried a little bit but not completely, and when you paint on acrylic paint at that point, it will be lifting, the pigment lifts up off the canvas, and so you're doing brush strokes but you feel like you're going back. So just if it does that to you, you're just gonna have to stop painting that area and work on another area and then come back to it, and maybe add, like, if the blue is too dry, or if the blue is in the middle stage, when I go to paint, all I do is lift the blue up instead of mixing it together. I'm just gonna have to let it go ahead and dry a little more, add some more blue so that they do blend together. So these are things that you already know and you've experienced, so you just apply them when you do this canvas. Another thing, when I get, right now I'm going to show you my brush, it's like got a ton of purple on it. If I were to go up right now and paint in the sky, I'm going to be getting purple up here. So there are times when you're just going to have to clean your brush so that you're not putting pigment in places you don't want it to be. And if you forget to do that and you make a mistake, just figure out a way to use the color. There's only happy accidents. So I'm just blending colors here, and right at that point I add the primary red. So I've been working with mostly alizarin crimson, which is a very pink red, magenta-ish. Then the primary red kind of adjusted the red color, and there I dabbed some of the primary yellow. I wanted to turn the red a little bit orangish. Okay, so now going as I drop this reflection into the water, one thing I'm going to do, I want my paint to, I'm watering it down a little bit so it's just a very smooth consistency, and it's not like a mirror reflection like this like perfectly symmetrical. There's actually going to, like, although the pink into purple is like this size in the sky, it's going to be condensed, reflected into the water. And the brush strokes, I'm going to be very purposeful in the type of brush stroke that I make. And if you look at a photograph of like a lake, the reflection in the water, there's a quality to the line. It's kind of pointed on one end and it gets fatter and then it gets more narrow. But I I don't have a great vocabulary to describe it, but that's what I'm trying to achieve with my brush stroke. And they're more horizontal. They're not usually like vertically oriented. They're sort of horizontally oriented, but it's a very organic shape. There's a hair on my canvas. I was able to peel it off. And while the water is wet, I'm going to mix up a little bit of a darker blue to get some like the shape that I was talking about. So I have some purple. I need to get some little bit of black. I'll just work with purple for now. So I'm using the purple and the primary blue. To this sort of shape I'm talking about. And they get larger as you go down the canvas, as you come more and more into the foreground. I'm going to do some skinnier ones up here. I'm going to go back to my land. Since I've got this darker color, I'm going to just kind of work with this a little bit. So I'm going to let that dry, I think. Yeah, I'm going to let that dry for the moment. I can always come back with lighter colors, more darker colors, or more dark colors. I'm going to work on the clouds. I'm pretty content with my sky, and since I'm going to do these clouds on top of it, they'll cover over anything, and they could cover over anything that I didn't like. Oh, I know what I was going to do before I do that. I want to, this is pretty dry. I want to put a sun in here. So I'm using a flat brush, and your sun could be anywhere. My inspiration picture has it in this area, and so I'm just going to take this and kind of move in a circle. I'm twisting the brush to make that roundish shape, and it just is positioned right above, I'm positioning it right above the water. And I just did pure white. I'm now going to dip my brush in some yellow and see how the yellow looks on that. And I like the color I'm getting, so I'll also layer the yellow on it. And I need to let that dry. So while that's drying, I'm going to go and work on the clouds. Clouds can be, you could go any direction you want to with the clouds. My inspiration kind of has them angled, and I like that effect. It just gives since we're doing a sailboat, it just kind of gives that over idea of the wind blowing and this sailboat moving across the water, clouds kind of skittering across the sky at a sunset. So that I'm gonna just roll with that. So I got my white paint. There's a little bit of blue in my paint simply because it came off of my brush when I dipped in the blue earlier, and I'm okay with that. So it's not a stark white at this point. It's just, and it is the very, very slightest element of blue. And I'm going to use pretty light strokes And just going to do a few of these to position some clouds across the sky. Okay, now I'm going to mix in some of the alizarin crimson. And white. And this time I'm kind of mixing it on the canvas, so I just have the two colors and one of these little paint wells, and I just mash it down, and that kind of mixes the two together. So when I put these down, I'm sort of thinking like the clouds can be all kinds of different shapes, but I like that idea. You sort of have the bulgy part in the middle, and it sort of breaks apart a little bit and gets more broken up and wispy on the edges. So that's kind of the quality I'm trying to capture here. So something that I like to do is go in maybe with a little something that's not quite as mixed in, all the way to pure alizarin crimson, and kind of at the top of these, or anyway, just in these, maybe get some areas where there's more pink showing through. We'll sort of play with that. I'm going to clean my brush, milk the cow. And one thing I'm going to do with the clouds is I clean my brush. I'm going to use a clean white now. And just on the bottom side of these clouds, I'm going to do a little bit of a cleaner white. And it's fun. You can kind of see as you turn your brush just the different effects that you can get with just simply adjusting the brush stroke. Then even on the white clouds, I'm going to get some of this white on this underside. I'm just going to scuff the canvas a little bit. I'm going to get a smaller brush and work. Oh, another thing you can do, actually, I'm going to use the same big brush. I'll use this brush. Is I'm going to mix a little bit of white and that yellow. And I'm also going to put, like I was doing with the white, I'm going to do that with yellow, kind of up in these clouds to get the sunlight sort of in the clouds. I don't like that color. I'm going to add a tiny bit of alizarin crimson to it. It was just too neonish for me. I don't like it's looking kind of hairy because you can see the brush strokes. I don't like that effect. I'm going to take this color that I'm working with. Get a little more. So it's the yellow and alizarin crimson. And I'm going to work around the sun. I'm going to go back to this brush, and while that's wet, I'm going to get some white in the middle of the sun. Then I'm going to go back to this brush. So these colors I made, so this alizarin crimson, and the white I'm going to do under the sun. I just don't like the shape that brush is making, so I'm going to switch brushes, see if I can get a different shape. So that shape I was talking about on the water, that's what I'm trying to do with this color, under where the sun is. And these get larger and a little more spaced out as you go down. I'm going to mix a little more alizarin crimson. So I used that same base color, just added some more alizarin crimson. I'm going to add more alizarin crimson and some white. That time I did a lot the primary red. I'm going to go back to this brush that I'm not crazy about and work with, I think I'm going to go with a little bit of purple. Let me do purple and alizarin crimson. Okay. Now I'm going to use, this brush has done me really well, so I'm going to go back to this brush. I'm going to put some black on my palette. And let's see what I can do with this brush. I'm going to work on the land. And we're just dealing with silhouettes, so that makes it so easy. Just kind of curve the top. And just kind of loosely have a similar shape down into the water. I think I got my black there was too much water mixed into it when I first painted that, so it's very, very transparent. Now with the edge of my brush, just very, very easily, I'm going to go across here. And you just get that. I'm going to make the top just a little bit kind of lumpy, so you just get this suggestion of land that's far away. Now I'm going to go back with my brush, and I want to get some lightness right here at the edge. And I'm going to do alizarin crimson. The color I want to get is kind of bluey, purple, white. Let's see if I like this. Right there, it got the black into it, and so I got a big streak of black on my canvas. I don't like that. So I'm not painting this in solid. I'm kind of letting some of the color show through. I've got black in my brush, so I can clean it. I'm going to go with the primary red in with this white, see if I can get I'm not quite getting the color I want. Yeah, that's better. Okay. I'm going to go back into my sun. I'm not crazy about the shape. I'm looking at my canvas from an angle, and it's like a perfect circle from my angle, but when I look at it straight on, it's skewomp. It looks like a lemon. So let me go back and see if I can get it more That I want to go back with this brush again. Before I put my sailboat on, just want to make sure I've got the water the way that I want it. So at this point, I played with some lighter blues in the water with that organic shape that I've mentioned before. I want to take this blue a little more into here. Break this up a little more. Okay, so now I'm going to paint my sailboat. I'm not an expert on sailboats. I'm going to use a smallish brush, watered down black, and I'm going to start, and I just want to do a straight line down. So figure out kind of how tall I want it to be, where I want it to end. So I'm going to do a little dot there. Then I'm going to take another side of the triangle in this direction. And then I'm going to go down from this point, and I'm going to do a sort of a triangle that's curving outward, and it's going to go to about here. Get a bigger brush, clean it. I ended up getting my black too thin. When you're painting the sails, just think about triangles. There will be two kind of long, thin triangles, one more straight up and down, one more curved where the wind is filling it. And I use the thin down paint, kind of sketch out an outline, and then fill in with the black. The boat itself below those sails, do a curved line that extends both left and right beyond the outer edges of the triangles. And then I fill in the bulk of the boat, one end of the boat being more angled than the other. Little lines that go from the bottoms of the triangles to the boat kind of give the suggestion of the rigging. I'm just going to let my black items dry a little bit because I just let the paint, I mixed too much water into the paint, and so it's very, very transparent. So I'll let that dry, and then I'll come back, and while that's drying, I'm going to go into some of these darker reflections in the water. So I'll use my purple and black and blue. So then these brush strokes are going to go, they're going to kind of be two sections, very loose, but it will be kind of where the two larger dark shapes are. Add a little water, get a little smoother to paint with. And I'm going to go around and add some darker reflections throughout the painting. I'm also going to take some of this dark up into the sky and just sort of brush it in. At this point, I use just a clean, damp brush to kind of smooth that darker blue into the lighter blue of the sky. Since the black is dried, I can go back with a thicker black and get it filled in a little more solid. This is also a great time to adjust any edges. So at this point, I'm just going to let it dry for a while and then come back to it and see how it looks. While it's wet, you're dealing with kind of reflected light, and so I'm going to let it dry and see if there are any finishing touches I want to do. Hey guys, I'm back. I let the painting dry completely, and I kind of would walk in and out and take a peek at it, just sort of let it percolate in my mind, my taste, whether I liked it or not. And I like a couple of things about it that I thought I would change. So one thing that I ended up liking about it is the black in here. Remember, it was too watered down, and so it ended up being a little bit transparent, and I went back and I added some more black. I didn't get that black in completely, and I really can't see. When I look in the screen, you can't see it, so let me pull it up. I actually ended up really liking the differences in this black, and the reason being it kind of gives an idea of it being three-dimensional and the sun kind of having like a solar sort of flaring behind the shape. So I think I'm going to leave that. This I probably will address, maybe get some more black on the boat. So I also did a little more blackness on the land. What really bothered me was how red the sky is. So I worked at mixing a color that would soften that bright, bright red. And as I worked in the sky, I would also come down and kind of add that color into the water. With the water reflections, it's nice to kind of dab your colors in various places along the water because of the shimmering reflections that you have with water. Ideally, you would have the color of your sky just the way you wanted it before you put a boat on, because now the trick is getting that color in behind the silhouette of the boat. Just makes it more challenging, but not impossible. So finally, the last thing that bothered me was just how solid the clouds looked. So I brought in some white and just kind of scuffed up the edges of the clouds and added just some wispy white brush marks kind of between the clouds to add a little more brokenness, wispiness to the clouds. So here we are, guys, my finished painting, and I think one thing I'll adjust is right here where the boat touches the water. It has a little bit of an effect like the boat is floating, and if I paint the really dark blue right here at this edge, I think I could correct that. But other than that, I'm very pleased with the painting. I just love the composition like that. It really gives you a sense of movement in the shimmering water. Here is another one of these that I did. I think it's a little bit looser, and I like it too. I think just showing you both of these can show you there can be varieties of the same composition even with one artist. So I'm really excited to see what you guys do with it. And don't forget, I mean, I did a sailboat, but you could do any kind of boat. You could have a person paddleboarding, maybe do that sort of a silhouette in your painting. Your land could look a little bit different. So this is the jumping platform, and you can be as creative as you would like from this point. I hope to see you guys soon. Bye.